Today's episode is brought to you by We Break You Buy. Interested in sports cards and memorabilia? Check out We Break You Buy on TikTok. We Break You Buy is a small operation run by three brothers, offering spots for a chance at winning some incredible sports cards and memorabilia. That's We Break You Buy. Check it out today on TikTok. About the Roku channel, because I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing. I did not know either until about 8:30 p.m. last night, but it was very clutch.
Yeah, the Roku channel where I can watch all seasons of Two Broke Girls.
Is that what you do with that?
That's the only thing I do with that.
Oh, so you knew about this, Anton?
I knew about Two Broke Girls.
But you didn't know about the Roku channel?
Well, I knew about Two Broke Girls on the Roku channel. That was it.
Well, why didn't you tell me about the Roku channel? I feel like this is vital information.
I'm pretty sure I've talked about Two Broke Girls on the Roku channel before.
You may have, and this is why wasn't it better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras, and I hope that doesn't make the final recording.
It absolutely will, and we have a return guest. Sean O'Connor, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, gentlemen. How's it going? Thanks again for having me.
Welcome back,
going
Sean.
Wonderful.
Coming back with a three-peat. Excited to be here.
I was going to say 3 appearances is a milestone, or at least it is in our book.
Absolutely.
And not only are you here for the 3-peat, you're here for a unique experience. You're here for the second film by a director whose first film that we covered.
And I think listeners will be shocked to hear the difference in my sentiment towards this movie. If anyone listened to the Avatar episode, I was really harsh on James Cameron, so we'll see if I keep that same tune today for True Lies.
It's funny you mention that. Yeah, that's okay. Believe it or not, all the guests that come on here, they all operate under the same assumption, which is I don't want to spoil my opinion of the film too early. But if you love something, Sean, shout it out. Don't be afraid. Yeah. To let the people know it's okay.
You know, I'll just come out with it then. I love this movie, and I'm so glad that you guys asked me to talk about it because it gave me a reason to rewatch it. I haven't watched it in years, but it's a movie that
I hadn't either.
I grew up watching with my dad, with my family, and I love it, man. It's just a good old-fashioned action movie. No frills, just fun. So I'm excited to dive into it and talk about it.
This is going to be a fun one. Like you, I hadn't seen this in a while. We're here to talk about True Lies today. It's the 30th anniversary coming up this July. But yeah, I like you, Sean. I hadn't seen this in, I would say, at least 10 years. And this was a lot of fun to revisit. Yeah, speaking of the Avatar Way of Water episode, we got some feedback. And just like we surmised on that episode, there are plenty of people that love that movie and who vehemently objected to our opinions of the film, which I found great. I mean, we welcome all feedback. It's all subjective.
Heck no. Give me names, addresses. I want to know who those people are so I can block them on Instagram and all socials because that's just ridiculous. Unacceptable.
It was a lot of YouTube handles. Some of the feedback was constructive, right?
Some, but not all.
I have to say, we get a lot of feedback on YouTube, Anton, and the majority of it is positive. I have nothing but thanks to give. Even the negative feedback, right? Like if you don't agree with us, that's fine. We got some feedback recently about our opinions on the Star Wars prequels, which I'm just going to double down on it. They are poorly written, poorly acted, poorly paced films. You're welcome.
So, folks, please go ahead and engage our recordings, our videos, with any comments and respond because we are open to it. We embrace it and we love it. So, and again, these opinions are just ours and we want to hear yours too.
Right. And Sean, I think it's important to point out, which we actually mentioned on the Avatar recording, but as much crap as we gave that film's complete lack of a plot and bloated runtime, all three of us agreed we're still going to see the third one when it comes out.
100%. And I just bought myself a 4K Blu-ray player and I'm probably going to buy both the first and the second one to watch in 4K. because it's that beautiful, right? I hate the movie.
You don't need to.
But it's
They're on Disney
beautiful.
Plus.
And it's not. Well, listen, I don't have to bore the listeners here, but it's a different type of beast watching it on an actual physical disc than streaming. Much better
Well, if you
quality.
don't love it, don't spend your money on it. Just get that Disney Plus 4K.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that.
You don't really want to spend $20 on Avatar: The Way of Water, do you?
If you put it that way, yeah, maybe not.
Well, when you put it that way, don't worry. He used a coupon.
I'll buy it second
fair.
hand.
Okay, all right. Well, that counts. I'll tell you what you can and probably should spend $20 on. The 4K release of this film, True Lies, is coming out on March 13th.
Excellent.
I feel like that's a good investment. James Cameron is finally making it available in the proper format that we all deserve. He is doing the same thing with The Abyss. Last week's episode was The Abyss. We explained it on there as well, Anton. But this is why we decided to cover these two films in a row, right? Two Cameron films in a row. They were both completely unavailable on physical media for the longest time. And they're finally being released by Cameron himself on 4K because he's a control freak.
Mhm.
And what better reason to cover these films than a celebration of them finally making themselves available to the masses. And of course, like we said, it's the 30th anniversary of True Lies coming up later this year. So it was a good excuse for us to do this.
I love that. And also Aliens, too. I'm pretty sure that's coming out.
Oh, is it really? Oh, that's a great,
Mhm.
Well, Aliens is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as admin goes, we'll make it real quick, Anton. If you like what you hear, please give us a like, a subscription, a follow. You also now have the ability to contribute monetarily to our podcast. If you are so kind, please do so. And the Patreon is coming. We are working on it. And by working on it, I mean we just haven't set it up yet.
But we will.
Yep, we will. This is the second episode or third episode in a row where we've said that. So we should probably just go ahead and do that because it's probably getting old.
But it's going to be there. Promise.
Indeed. Well, that being said, without further ado, Sean, before we get into this, is there anything that you wish to plug today?
This is my third one. I actually didn't come prepared for a plug.
It's okay.
I just want to say happy birthday to my daughter. She turned 1 yesterday. So I'll just
birthday,
plug my beautiful
Happy
baby girl,
birthday.
Vienna. Thank you very much. That's it. Nothing fancy.
Excellent. Well, with that being said, True Lies. Secretly a spy, but thought by his family to be a dull computer salesman, Hadi Taska is tracking down nuclear warheads in the possession of Muslim terrorists. Harry's mission is complicated when he realizes his neglected wife, Helen, is contemplating an affair with Simon, a used car salesman who claims he's a spy. When his family is threatened, Harry must save the world and patch up his marriage at the same time. True Lies was released on July 14th, 1994 by Lightstorm Entertainment and 20th Century Fox, directed by James Cameron, screenplay by James Cameron, based on the film La Totale by Claude Zidi, Simon Michael, and Didier Kaminka, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Arnold, Bill Paxton, Art Malik, Tia Carrere, Eliza Dushku, and Grant Heslov. A budget of $100 million, that is $207 million adjusted for inflation, and a box office of $379 million, that is $785 million adjusted for inflation. Sean, why did you choose True Lies to discuss?
Well, Pat, when you texted me about True Lies, I immediately got very excited because, like I said earlier, I loved this movie as a kid, but it's one of those things where, was it really a good movie, right? I don't know. And I haven't seen it in years. And I know you mentioned 10 years. I think it's probably been closer to 20 years since I've watched this movie. So I wanted to just sit down, rewatch it, be a little more analytical and just kind of, understand what's going on in the movie so I can dissect it and talk about it on the podcast. And man, I was pleasantly surprised with how good this movie is and how it still holds up. The cast, right, obviously, that you just named, a lot of heavy hitters, a lot of big names, especially in the 90s, just make it such a great movie to want to jump into. And it's, and I think that there's kind of a dying breed of movies that I think kind of fizzled out in the 90s, of this kind of over-the-top action hero, right? That horrible actor, but a big action hero that just kind of saves the day from terrorists or some sort of organization with a lot of explosions and a lot of over-the-top action sequences. And this was, I think, kind of leading up to the end of an era, so to speak, in True Lies. So I was excited when you brought this up, and I'm looking forward to diving deeper into some of the key components that you always talk about.
Anton, what is your history with True Lies, if any?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have seen this movie before in college for the first time, and I think that what's really exciting about this film is when I think of, that really resonated with me what Sean said about this like yesteryear of like great action films. Like True Lies definitely like reminds me of that archetype of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, these great action movie stars that fit the mold of what action movies were for me growing up. So this was definitely a film that I enjoyed when I was seeing it when I was younger, and I feel like it's cool to think about there was a time and place for films like this. I've already shared my opinion on earlier episodes of the current state of action films today and how the action stars we get nowadays is usually Tom Holland and Timothy Chalamet. But this is definitely a fun, nostalgic action film. So definitely enjoy this. And of course, a lot of respect for James Cameron.
This is a very famous, very iconic action film. And Sean, I completely agree with something you mentioned earlier about how this is really just a relic from a different era, maybe the end of an era in some ways. I will disagree with something you said. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger is a good actor. Considering what he does, he has a self-awareness that I think very few action stars have. What I love about Arnold, I love many things about Arnold and his movies, but he was always acutely aware of how ridiculous of a personality he was, and he never took himself too seriously. And I think that's why I enjoy him so much. Objectively, yes, I do understand what you mean. If you compare him to, Oscar-winning thespians that were contemporaries of his, yeah, sure, not a great actor, but I think it says a lot where he is really one of a kind. There is no modern equivalent of him. I know there was some very silly hype about The Rock being the modern day Arnold Schwarzenegger years ago, but that died off really quickly. Not even close.
Not close.
He doesn't have nearly the charisma, or he isn't willing to take the risks that Arnold did. It's easy to overlook it now, but Arnold really was willing to do different types of films. He would do comedies, he would do kids' movies, he would do R-rated material. He was all over the place. And this movie was a massive hit when it was released 30 years ago in 1994. James Cameron and Arnold, they were really riding that wave of success after Terminator 2 had come out 3 years previously, right? Arnold was still very much one of, if not the biggest movie star in the world at the time. He had just suffered the first flop of his career with Last Action Hero. And, looking at his filmography, this was really the last good movie that he was in. After this, the quality really began to dip. Here's what he was in after True Lies. Junior, the one where he gets pregnant. It's like, okay, fine. Right? I don't really remember much about it. I wouldn't call it a great movie. Eraser. I liked Eraser, but it's not on this
Actually,
level,
not
right?
Bad. Cult classic.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Jingle All the Way, which I really like.
Really like that one. Classic.
Right?
Wasn't Jamie Lee Curtis also in that one too? Or am I mixing up movies?
No, I forget. I forget the
Christmas-
actress name.
Christmas
It
with the
wasn't Jamie
Cranks
Lee
or
Curtis,
something.
though. But here's where it really starts to get bad. It flips bad for him in 1997. He's in Batman and Robin. He doesn't really recover from that. And after that, it's End of Days, The Sixth Day, Collateral Damage, and then Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. It's just, this was really it for him.
Right. And we've mentioned before, it was around Terminator 3, his political career really kicked off. So
Right. That same year, he gets elected governor of California. And then, of course, he's tried to really kind of return to Hollywood in the past decade, I think with pretty limited success. And I don't think that's any fault of his. He's just a lot older and he's in a different part of his career. He's still a legend. I still love him, but you could make a case that actually, you know what? I'm wrong. This is not the peak of his career. The peak of his career was absolutely Terminator 2. I don't think anybody would dispute that.
I think that would be the peak for most people's career.
Yeah.
Right.
There's really no way to top that, right?
No.
Like, how do you? But his co-star, Jamie Lee Curtis, who, by the way, is now an Academy Award-winning actor, this film was a huge hit for her career, too. And it's funny, Sean, I don't think it's a coincidence that your first film with us on the podcast was Halloween 2, starring Jamie Lee Curtis.
Life is, time is a flat circle.
It all comes back around.
Yeah. But I would say apart from the original Halloween and maybe the new film that she won the Oscar for, this is the role that she's best known for, right? Would you say True Lies is her most famous role?
100%. I would think so. Definitely her biggest box office success and what everyone's going to know her for. I mean, there are going to be people like us who know her for Halloween, but I think most people as a household name know her for something like True Lies in the 90s. It's just a bang movie.
I did want to kind of speak also to a younger generation of, you know, my sister who's, you know, 5 years younger, and like that generation really knows Jamie Lee Curtis for Freaky Friday.
It's a big one.
True. Yeah,
It's a big one.
I didn't realize how good she was. She has a very good arc the entire movie, from that neglected, shy wife to saving the day with her husband towards the end of it all, shooting an Uzi.
And of course, Jamie Lee Curtis continued to show her range even at last year's outing with Everything Everywhere All at Once, where she won that Academy Award. So
I didn't realize she won something for that. That's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, with the hot dog fingers. I could not stop laughing in the theaters.
She killed it.
And then we get to James Cameron, right?
Mr. Jim Cameron.
Yeah, Big Jim. This is an interesting film to revisit, right? It's really the only straight up popcorn film that he made, right? Everything else that he has made has had serious environmental or like dramatic themes associated with it. Give me 1 second. My cat is destroying something. Bear with me one tiny second here.
We're doing it live.
Good.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, this is interesting for Cameron because this is the only film he directed that wasn't quote unquote his. Every other film that he has done has been something that he developed himself. This was just a straight up popcorn flick that was actually brought to him by Arnold. So it's pretty interesting just for that. And just rewatching it a couple times in the past week to prepare for this movie is so incredibly 90s. We were out of the Cold War. We were in the uncertain world of international terrorism.
I could hear the commercials for Chia Pet going on as I was watching this film.
As your Furby regurgitated the words back.
Like, oh yeah, Chevy Blazers.
Oh, that's right, Zoo Books and the Tiger poster.
Yeah, everything about this movie just screamed 90s. Just the music, the vibe of the movie, the wardrobe, everything. It was, maybe the nostalgia had a heavy impact on my decision of how I like this movie, but man, was it a nice breath of fresh air.
The nostalgia factor hit me so hard rewatching this because, Sean, like you, I saw this film quite a bit, but I was so young when I saw it. And then I went just for such a long period of time without seeing it. It's interesting how you saw this on Roku. I don't know about the quality of what you saw, but I watched this on Tubi, and it was clearly a version that was like shown on cable channel, like TBS or something, because there were even fade outs for commercial breaks. Anton, I don't know if you noticed that when you were watching it on Tubi.
It was a little different.
Yeah. Sean, let's just say it wasn't the greatest quality version.
It's funny. I was actually very surprised with how good the quality was from my Roku streaming, which, again, I've never heard of Roku streaming before, but I remember saying to myself, this is really good quality. So I don't know if maybe Roku got a little 4K leak or something like that. Not entirely sure, but it looked really nice.
It was probably better than what I watched.
I'm sure it was. Sounds like it was.
But, all I can say is I really look forward to rewatching this in 4K because, man, Cameron, he knows how to shoot an action movie. I will say that.
Yes,
but with that being said, let's get into the production history of this film. This is a fun production history. This was the first project that wasn't quote-unquote his. James Cameron said the idea for this film was suggested to him by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And this was the first film that Cameron made as part of a $500 million deal between 20th Century Fox and his own production company called Lightstorm Entertainment. Arnold Schwarzenegger's brother-in-law Robert Shriver had shown him a French film called La Totale. Schwarzenegger wanted to do a film like that one because he thought the super secret agent character was interesting. Now, Cameron was surprised because he had never seen Schwarzenegger suggest a project solely based on his interest in a character. And after watching the film himself, Cameron loved the idea of presenting a secret agent with a nearly unlimited professional resources as a family man, basically asking the question, quote, who would James Bond be if he got home and had to answer to his wife, end quote. And so he decided to make the movie. Cameron originally hired a team of writers to help him come up with the film's jokes. However, after being mostly unsatisfied with their work, Cameron fired them and decided to try his own hand romantic comedy. And here's a nice bit of trivia. This was the first film to have a budget of $100 million ever.
Really?
Big Jim. Yeah,
Yes.
Big Jim. I always thought it was Terminator 2, but I looked this up. Terminator 2 came in just under 100 million. It was like 97.
The only thing we can say here is whenever Tom Arnold walks on a set, it demands a big budget.
He was great in this, by the way.
He was great in this movie. It's the only thing that we've ever seen him in where he's good, and I think everyone would agree with that.
I mean, this and Soul Plane.
Who could forget?
What a reference.
Who could forget his cameo in Austin Powers?
Right.
You tell that turd who's boss.
Exactly.
Is Tom Arnold underrated? Wait.
Nope, he's good.
He's not
He's good.
underrated. He's properly rated.
Tell that turd who's boss. Oh man, Austin Powers.
We're gonna get through this.
He's been in a lot of questionable films.
Yeah.
Cradle to the Grave, Mr. 3000.
DMX.
I don't want to be too harsh on him. The man will show up for a paycheck if you have one. There's nothing wrong with that.
He knows he's
Yeah.
not winning any Oscars. He's going to get a nice fat paycheck for that cameo and move on with his day.
Right.
Stay out of the limelight.
Nah, I don't know about a fat paycheck. He'll get a paycheck. Speaking of Tom Arnold, he did not expect to get a role in this movie. He went to the audition mostly for the chance to meet James Cameron. He did some scenes with Arnold, but Cameron immediately noticed the chemistry between the two actors. And afterwards, Tom Arnold jokingly said about Schwarzenegger, he's not that big, I think I can take him, which highly amused Cameron and sealed the deal. Now, initially, and I can't imagine why this would happen, 20th Century Fox objected, as Tom Arnold's reputation at the time was not positive due to his public antics with his then wife, Roseanne Barr. But
I don't even know what that means.
well, you can Google it all. It's all available.
Right.
Yes, but when Cameron threatened to take the movie somewhere else if Arnold couldn't be cast, they relented. Look, all I can say is I read this as trivia for the film. Let's put a grain of salt on that. Was James Cameron willing to take the movie somewhere else if he couldn't cast Tom Arnold in it? I don't know. But moving on. The film's opening sequence at the Swiss mansion was actually filmed at the Rosecliff Mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. And sidebar, if any of the listeners have not been to Newport, Rhode Island, it is a really cool place to visit.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, you been there, Sean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Shouts
really
out
cool
Newport.
place. Yeah, all these old school mansions from the Gilded Age. Fascinating.
And you can't forget the opening scene that just sets the tone for the entire movie. The first line of the movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "Honey, I'm home." That's the first thing he says. And you just know it's going to be a wild ride.
This is a phenomenal opening to a movie. The fictional Hotel Marquis in Washington, D.C. was filmed at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Now, the U.S. Defense Department supplied 3 Marine Harriers and their pilots for a fee of $100,736, or the equivalent of $2,410 per hour.
It actually seems pretty reasonable.
Reasonable,
If you think
yeah.
about
Right?
it, right?
Yeah, very
Just
reasonable.
renting some Harrier pilots for a few hours.
That's interesting. I would imagine they factored in the publicity they were getting for it, I guess. I don't know.
Just
But I'll
have,
get
like,
to that a little bit
have a
later.
kid's birthday party, just rent a Harrier pilot.
Yeah, right.
for
Is
an
this
hour.
like available to me? They look like
Yeah.
fun. This was the first movie for Digital Domain, the special effects company founded by James Cameron and Stan Winston in 1993. Shout out to Stan Winston, legend. Now, the bridge that was blown up, the 7 Mile Bridge, which is in the Florida Keys, that is actually an 80-foot model that they constructed for that sequence. Really looked good, very convincing. The soundstage where they shot the Harrier scale model was the largest 180-degree green screen background ever built at the time. Trivia time for you both. This ended up as the 3rd highest grossing film of 1994. Which 2 films were bigger?
Backdraft?
No, I'll give you a hint though. The #1 movie of 1994 was animated.
Oh, of course, The Lion King.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, The Lion King. Yep.
Yeah.
#2 film won Best Picture that year.
Philadelphia.
No. But you're so close.
Saving
Ooh.
Private Ryan?
No.
Well, then the other film, Forrest Gump.
Yep, that's it. Not surprising, right? Like,
No.
yeah, top 3 films. Like, yeah, pretty popular.
Who was number 4?
Ugh, I think it was Speed. I could be wrong, but I think it was Speed, which is another shout out to Speed, another legendary action movie.
I actually have that on 4K. I have to watch it.
Shout out to 20th Century Fox being in the top 5 for highest grossing films in 1994.
Has Speed 2 been on the podcast yet? Because I feel like that might fit.
It has not.
It has not.
It's technically on the list, and I'm dreading it because that is that is like called the United Nations bad.
Well, then there's also not as bad as Speed 3, Speed Reading. I don't know if you've ever seen.
Is that a real movie?
No, that's another critic reference. I'm making
Okay.
too many. I'm making too many of them.
I'm like, I could see that being like a directed video thing, but what's it called? Speed 3?
Speed 3, speed reading, and then the joke in the critic is then Keanu Reeves trying to read a sentence, but he can't read it fast enough. I tell you, I love
subtitle for Speed 2. Is it it's like cruise control.
Yeah,
cruise control.
It is cruise control. Speed 3 is just at a spelling bee. Like Keanu Reeves just has to spell.
Keanu, can you spell chrysanthemum? What?
What?
Oh, she got rose? Okay. After Titanic was released in 1997, Schwarzenegger and Cameron met to discuss the True Lies sequel. It actually came pretty close to getting made. By 1999, Cameron and 20th Century Fox, they were in negotiations to actually make it, and Jeff Easton was hired to write the screenplay. By the turn of the millennium, the project was moving forward. Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Arnold were planning on reprising their roles. They were very, very close to making this, and then September 11th happened, and in January 2002, Schwarzenegger said the film was going to be made with minor script changes, which of course dealt with terrorism. But later that year, Cameron announced that the sequel was not going to be made, saying, quote, "Terrorism is no longer something to take as lightly as we did in the first one. I just can't see it happening given the current world climate," end quote. So thanks, Bin Laden.
I guess that's fair.
I get it. I do.
Yep.
I mean, I understand. Because we're going to get to some of the terrorism stuff in this movie, and I get it.
Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to add here. We haven't really touched on this quite so often, but I do love me some video game tie-ins. And True Lies did have a video game adaptation that was on the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, and the Game Boy, and it was a top-down shooter. So I definitely recommend, if anyone ever wants to see something a little hilarious, is a sprite version of Arnold Schwarzenegger going through the neighborhood taking down terrorists. Check it out.
Have you played it?
I have played it. It's all right. It's not the best game, but definitely a fun little nostalgic piece of the 90s.
How did I not hear about this? I had no idea that was a video game.
Check it out. It was on the Sega Genesis, and it's...
I'll tell you how you didn't hear about it, Sean, because every movie back in the day had a video game tie-in, and most of them weren't good.
Yep, Die Hard had one. It wasn't good.
Correct me if I'm wrong. GoldenEye was the first one to actually do well, like, critically.
I feel like we'll have to take a look at the history of it, but that one really does set the bar for video game adaptation. And because for the most part, it's just another arm for these studios to make money anyway. So not a ton of incentive to make a great game. But hey, GoldenEye, nice exception.
Oh yeah,
that's arguably the best video game of all time.
It's on the short list.
Definitely on the short list.
Speaking of stuff that went under the radar, did either of you know there is a True Lies TV series that aired on CBS last year?
Yes, I know because it got picked up by Netflix.
Oh, it got canceled from CBS and picked up by Netflix?
Yes.
Have you seen it?
I have not, because I was skeptical.
Sean, thoughts?
Well, so up until last night at 8:00 p.m., I had no idea. When I was looking for True Lies, the movie, I came across True Lies, the TV show. So did zero research on that. So I'll take your word for it if it's good or not.
I haven't seen it either. Do they not market these things well? Because I feel like all three of us are pretty adept at knowing about like what's new or whatnot, and I had no idea this was a thing. It was on CBS.
Yeah, and quick correction, Paramount Plus is where it was on.
Yeah. Well, that was called CBS at one point, right?
Maybe.
I feel like it was.
Yeah, Paramount has all the CBS content on it.
Okay, that makes sense. All right.
So, I mean, I think part of where we're getting a lot of these big titles just kind of flying under the radar is that because probably we're trying to already filter as much of this noise that we're getting from the bombardment of what's actually being released on streaming. So it's sometimes you could hear something and not even realize that there was actually a pretty like big name release because of so many different streaming services. There's just so much content getting put out there.
Well, look at the new one, right? You have a Mr. and Mrs. Smith streaming series that's out right now.
Donald Glover.
But I'm aware of that one for whatever reason, but not the True Lies one that came out last year. So who knows?
I'm pretty sure it was because I called that one out. So
Well,
Yeah.
that still counts. I was aware of it. You maybe you told me, but well, way to ruin it for me, Anton, on the podcast. Wow.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. Did you see it, Anton?
I did not. I'm skeptical.
Well, Donald Glover, he's cool.
Yeah, Donald Glover's cool.
Okay.
But would you watch something just for Donald Glover? I don't know. Right?
No, I
probably
wouldn't.
not. I don't think I would.
Nah.
If he's in it, oh, that's awesome. Donald Glover's
Anton,
in it.
I appreciate you volunteering to watch it and letting us know what it's like. So
I didn't say that.
no, thank you. I appreciate it.
All
Sean
right,
does too.
Okay, that's not what I said. At the end of the day, it's all about having some fun with this. So
yeah,
why don't we go ahead?
Fun,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and that's fun, and that's fun. So why don't we go ahead?
Talk about why it wasn't better.
Exactly.
Number one reason: the pacing and the story. Anton, what did we talk about last week? What movie?
We talked about another James Cameron classic, of course, The Abyss.
How long was that film?
That film was, well, I could give you the exact length, but essentially it was way too long.
It was 140 minutes. This film was 140 minutes as well.
Ugh.
Sean, 140 minutes is a long runtime for an action movie. It's beefy.
I don't disagree with you. 140 minutes is a long time, but this is almost not just an action movie, right? It's a combination of an action movie and I think almost like a pseudo romantic comedy too, kind of, in a way, right?
Absolutely.
So there are action sequences woven throughout the entire movie, obviously with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's also showing a couple that kind of drifted apart a little bit, coming back together through, Jamie Lee Curtis's escapades and Arnold Schwarzenegger just kind of showing that he is a spy. So I don't know. I feel like it actually flowed okay. It didn't seem too long to me.
Well,
it definitely seemed too long to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I see what you're saying, Sean. You have
I do agree with you, Sean, though. I do think it is a little long, though, all joking aside. I love the first half of this movie, and I like the second half. I think some of the stuff in the terrorist compound drags a bit. I think the bridge chase, it goes on a little long. It is spectacular to watch, but it's a little long. By the time we get to the skyscraper and the Harrier jet, I was just waiting for the movie to end. Any of the scenes with his daughter, I thought were a complete bore.
What's tough for me is I really do love what James Cameron does in terms of really letting you absorb just like how grand and big these scenes are. This is something we've talked about just basically all of his films, is he knows how to world build. And so when he sucks you into a scene of Arnold Schwarzenegger chasing a terrorist through DC on horseback, you really do see that. There's so many, there's so much, single camera tracking shots of just Arnold going through DC. But at the same time, then you're getting multiple angles of Arnold Schwarzenegger on a horse. And I think at about like minute 4, I was like, this is a lot of Arnold on a horse.
He says, my horse is tired.
Your horse. I agree with you, Anton. There's a lot of shots of him on the horse. How many times does he say sorry? Sorry. Yeah. Excuse me. I need to borrow your horse. Sorry. I would say the film is 20 minutes too long. Trim out some of the Simon stuff. Trim out some of the hotel stuff. Take out bits and pieces of the terrorist plot. The Simon stuff is very entertaining, but it does drag along. And if you think about it, it is a bit of a giant side quest, but it is hilarious.
Well, I would argue the Simon part is important to the relationship aspect of the film, where if we're embracing the romance side of it, there has to be a foil to Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis's relationship.
That's right. It brings Jamie Lee Curtis into the world of super spy Arnold Schwarzenegger in that hotel scene when eventually they both get abducted by the terrorists.
I am seeing a trend here, though, with James Cameron in long run times. So this is 140 minutes. The Abyss is 140 minutes and was immensely boring in some parts, right? Terminator 2 is 135 minutes, but I think that's perfect. That I wouldn't change anything about Terminator 2. Titanic is a little over 3 hours, but I'm okay with it. I love Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
Avatar was 2 hours and 40 minutes, the first Avatar, right? That's just too long. And then Avatar: The Way of Water, which we covered, that was just an absurd 3 hours, right?
That's just crazy.
Legitimately, that was an hour too long. Unbelievable.
Almost 2 hours too long.
Too much. Too much jungle to jungle.
Jungle Book boy.
So could this have been trimmed down a little bit? Maybe. All right, but it didn't kill the movie for me. right?
No,
It could have been
no.
trimmed down, sure, a little bit in some of those areas that you did mention, but I think it still kept a decent flow.
Roger Ebert agreed with us. He said the movie is 135 minutes long, and at 120, without some of the hotel room as escapade, it could be a lot better, end quote. Now, La Totale, the French film on which it is based, that clocks in at only 105 minutes for what it's worth. We're all big La Totale fans here, right?
Yeah, of course. I love French cinema.
Obviously.
I have watched it several times actually this week, so.
Yeah. I actually prefer it to this, if we're being totally honest. And next week's episode will be on La Totale.
I actually prefer to watch it with no subtitles too, just to really get the fully immersive experience.
In the original French, obviously. I don't know anything about it. I really don't.
There was a trend of, I mean, it's not like a new trend or anything, but in the 90s, there are a few particular films that really stood out where you had the original French film and then like an American adaptation. The Birdcage, of course. I'm sure folks will remember that classic with Robin Williams. The film Jungle to Jungle, we just referenced it. That was also based on an original French film. The film was called Little Indian, Big City. Makes zero sense. And then, of course, can't forget the fun Les Visiteurs, or The Visitors, with Jean Reno.
I think the most high-profile one that I can think of would be La Femme Nikita, the Luc Besson film.
Right.
That was remade in 1993 as Point of No Return.
Very good call out.
Both of them were actually really good, but also with Jean Reno, I don't know, Anton, if you remember his role in La Femme Nikita.
Jean Reno's
amazing.
Him as Leon, his character in Godzilla, who I think was one of the stronger performances in the film.
Mission Impossible.
It's
so great.
Yeah.
Sean, have you seen La Femme Nikita?
I have not.
You would really enjoy it. It's a great action movie.
Interesting. Is it on Roku channel? Because I'm actually subscribed now. So.
Well, you tell me. You're the Roku expert here.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah,
it is definitely worth watching. It really is. The American remake Point of No Return, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I did enjoy that too. But you probably know its legacy. It was remade as like multiple TV shows. One of them was called La Femme Nikita. The other one was called Nikita with Maggie Q.
I do know Nikita. That was right around the same time as Daredevil, right?
Yeah, it has a pretty big legacy. It's been remade a few times. Very influential action film, but very cool.
Very influential.
And of course, Luc Besson is a legend at this point. I mean, he made Leon, he made The Fifth Element. Like those two films alone, they put you in the Hall of Fame, I would think.
I actually just watched that last week, The Fifth Element. Great movie.
It's amazing.
So good.
So much fun. That's a 4K movie. I'm sure you have, right?
Yeah, I just
saw it. You rewatched it, Sean?
Yeah, rewatched it.
Yeah,
I bought it on 4K.
Oh, classic.
So
should we cover that just because it's fun to talk about? It's such an awesome movie.
Of course.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, we can do that. I don't know if it qualifies for why one isn't better, but hey, it's our podcast. We can do whatever we want.
And while we may not have seen La Totale, we clearly have French cinema to thank for a lot of these films. So
yeah, I just want to reiterate, we're not going to be covering La Totale. I'm sorry if anyone was excited for that.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, I was lying. Questions about the plot. Why the Omega Sector? Like, why not the CIA?
Potential lawsuits, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe.
But other films talk about the CIA, and the CIA does questionable things in those films.
Right. I'm just such a nerd that I always overanalyze these things with the plot. But it's like, is the CIA a thing in this universe? Because so the Omega Sector, Anton, you pointed this out to me, right? They have surveillance teams available like on call, right? So they ostensibly operate like the FBI or a police organization, right?
Yeah.
But they're an undercover spy agency. He is so deep undercover. I'm talking about Hadi Tasker, right? He is undercover as a computer salesman, but he's really a spy for the Omega Sector. But I don't understand, why does he need to be undercover at all? He's not living on foreign soil. He's living in the United States. It's very strange.
It's not very clear.
No, there's no answer to this, obviously. But
and at the same time too, if this is supposed to be an agency maybe between that runs between the lines, or like it's even further into the espionage scene compared to the CIA, then why do they have Charlton Heston, Nick Fury? Huh?
It really was Nick Fury.
It was 100% Nick Fury, and I couldn't find anything that definitively had that it was inspired by Nick Fury, but there's no doubt in my mind, James Cameron's read a comic book.
We know James Cameron has read a comic book because at one point he was trying to make Spider-Man.
And also trying to make eventually was part of Battle Angel Alita.
Right.
Yeah, what?
Right.
You're right. What was up with that eye patch now that I'm thinking about it?
Maybe Charlton Heston just wanted to do it. Did you catch his character's name? He has an awesome name.
No, what is it?
Spencer Trilby. That's a great name. I enjoyed the Charlton Heston cameo. This is one of his last roles. He was pretty old at this point. This is pre-NRA days. Or maybe he was in the middle of the NRA stuff. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah, why does Harry bother with like a family at all, right? Like, why does he keep it secret from his wife? That's unanswerable, but it does lead to some great drama and comedy. I think the weakest part of this film's plot is the terrorist stuff. Crimson Jihad, Sand Spider.
It's so cheesy.
You know what it reminded me of, Anton? The terrorists from Superman 2 who are holding the hostages on the Eiffel Tower.
Now, I'll say this. There has to have been enough like self-awareness with Cameron and filming a bit of the campiness of this film. I mean, they even had the villains or the terrorists trying to film like their hostage video with the warheads, and then they run out of film. Like we run out of battery, and it's just so campy that like I feel like there has to be a sense of it's a bit of a joke.
Battery Aziz.
But honestly, that's what makes the movie in a way so great, because it doesn't take itself too seriously. Even towards the end, when I forget his name in the movie, but the lead terrorist is talking into the camera, talking about how they're going to blow up a city every day if they don't get what they want, and how we're going to blow it up is by turning this key. And then the reporter goes, "What key?" And then he turns around and there's no key. I don't know. It just makes you laugh.
Who's taking the key?
And they start shooting at Eliza.
I like to think that James Cameron was proud to write that joke.
I laughed at
that
it.
Stuff is funny, but I do think the actor who plays, I don't even know the guy's name either, the Sand Spider, Art Malik, he just doesn't make a very good villain.
I think part of it is how they introduced him as the main villain too. It's just Schwarzenegger walking through all of the ancient Persian art, and he just kind of looks like someone that was just lifting things in the warehouse.
Yeah, and then he's slapping
the shit
yeah, it's a couple times he slaps her.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, this is someone with a position of power, I guess.
I suppose. That's the thing though, right? For a bad guy that has nuclear weapons, he doesn't feel like a threat at all. You can't take him seriously. Now, obviously, Sean, to your point, that was probably the intention, but I feel like this is where the film could have benefited from a stronger, more memorable villain.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just thought he gave the vibe of you'd keep talking to him, and then you'd be like, "Can I talk to your manager?"
Yeah, you're like, "Are you sure you're in charge?"
There has to be somebody more important, right? Higher up.
Yeah, he's got the receding hairline. It's not great. I don't know how Crimson Jihad tracks Harry and Helen to the hotel. They just kind of show up out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Here's a bit of good trivia for you. So, if the main set pieces of this movie resemble James Bond, it may be because of the late, great Peter Lamont. Peter Lamont was the production designer on this film, and he worked on all of the Bond movies from For Your Eyes Only all the way up to Casino Royale, and he won an Academy Award for his work on Titanic, also directed by Cameron, obviously. So I wanted to give him a shout out because Titanic alone, that is some amazing production design work from Peter Lamont. A lot of Bond influences on this film, obviously. So this came out during the hiatus, Anton, that we talked about, right? There were no Bond movies from 1989 to 1995. There was a legal battle going on. So for 6 years, nobody had new James Bond movies, and True Lies came out during that sweet spot.
Right, during the infamous Bond Cold War.
That's correct.
True Lies 2, A Time to Jihad.
The Crimson is real. Say what you want about Cameron. Look, we gave him the praise he deserved on the Avatar podcast, but we can do it again here. Like, he really has an argument for greatest action director. I don't know if he's number one, but he's in the conversation. All of the action scenes in this film are outstanding. Top notch. Perfectly filmed, perfectly edited. The opening sequence at the Swiss mansion, which is Rhode Island, but whatever. It looks amazing. It's so much fun. It's got comedy. It's got charm. It's got Arnold doing his thing. It's so much fun.
It really is so enjoyable. I'm thinking about the movie. I'm just smiling, laughing at it. Him just dancing with Tia, doing the tango while guys are trying to hunt him down, and then he just walks out the front gate and just blows up. He just blows up
Sure,
a bunch of
here's my
barrels.
invitation. I like when he walks in through the kitchens and one of the chefs tries to stop him and he just starts insulting the food and he's like, "This has too much salt, take it back." And the guy's like, "What?"
Yeah. Classy move.
It's great.
I think my favorite part of this movie is after he just steals the Harrier jet and all of the terrorists are on like the 70th floor of the skyscraper, and they're all just like standing around because they're all idiots, right? We just said all of the enemies are really stupid. They're all just standing talking around, and you just see slowly this Harrier jet just rise up. It's just Arnold's face in it, and then he just starts unloading on all of them and just shooting all of them. It's just too good. It's just great scene after great scene, just like that with the action.
That's really well done. The bathroom brawl's great.
Mm-hmm.
The horse chase is really well filmed. The whole battle at the island compound where it's just levels of escalation. The bridge chase is great. It's really some of the best action of the 90s, really, if you think about it. Like, there's not much better than this that I could think of.
Let me ask you guys a question real fast, Pat.
Mhm.
You guys might not know this. That bathroom that they shot that fight scene in, is that the same bathroom from that one Mission Impossible movie with Henry? What's his name? Who's the new Superman?
Henry Cavill?
Yeah.
It looks a lot like it.
Looks just like it, right?
Yeah, that's a really good call out. The obvious answer is probably no, it's not the exact same bathroom, but you're right. It with the tiles and everything and the lights, it looks a lot like it. I wonder if they were influenced by it.
I saw it and I actually thought it was the same one, and I was like, you know what? I'll ask the pod tomorrow. You guys probably have it in your memory
It's
banks.
a really good question. That's a deep cut. Did you notice how incredible of a shot Arnold is in this movie? He is dropping guys left and right.
Oh yeah, dead aim.
I don't know what the body count is, but I'm guessing he kills 40 to 50 people in this film.
But don't worry.
Easily.
Don't worry. There were only bad guys.
But they were all bad.
Jamie Lee Curtis has a gun to her head, and he just shoots the guy in the head. Next time, duck.
Is that where the guy tells him to drop the rifle? And he drops the AK real quick and then just quick shots the guy with the pistol?
Yeah, he just pulls out the pistol, just headshots him. No problem.
Did you notice the Goldfinger homage in the beginning?
Yes.
Where he has the tuxedo under the wetsuit? Classic.
Very classy.
But yeah, when I say this movie is 90s, I mean, you had the giant desktop computers. You had the old school Windows logo on the PC. It's all like, it's the stepping stone, right, between like the old school stuff that you got prior to the 90s, and you can still see the connections to today, right? Like this film, as old as it is, the internet is featured in this film quite heavily.
There were two things in the film that really stood out where I know to me it felt natural because, oh yeah, I grew up in that era still, but there's going to be a whole generation of kids that are going to be like, why would you do that? The two things I'm referring to are newspapers. So even just showing a headline on a newspaper to like prove a point of like what was going on, with Simon showing it to Jamie Lee Curtis. No one does that. And then even just having briefcases in the film.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nobody has briefcases anymore.
But just kind of the fun.
If someone had a briefcase today, it would be suspicious.
Oh, so suspicious.
Like, what's that guy doing?
You'd be like, oh, yeah, what is that? Do you have drugs in there, sir?
No, just plane tickets.
Plane tickets, maps, BB guns.
Yeah, what would I even put in a briefcase in 2024? My laptop?
I put my lunch in it.
Yeah, like
it would have to be a laptop, but you have like laptops bags for that, right? Or a backpack.
Yeah, it's not very functional. I bring a backpack. It's got more compartments, more space.
Right.
Keep your hands free.
Yeah, it's yeah.
We've evolved as a society, you know?
We have.
True Lies 2, we just have backpacks and laptops.
That could be the plot of the opening action sequence. Arnold could be like, "What's he doing with the briefcase? Nobody uses those anymore."
And these flashbacks of the Crimson Jihad.
I don't understand why I wasn't invited to be an avatar, the way of water.
You just see Arnold seeing red.
One thing I noticed about the bathroom fight, this takes place in Georgetown Mall, which is a real thing, a real place. One of the most heavily policed areas in the United States. So there's this massive fight followed by automatic weapons fire. Where's the security? Where's the cops? Why aren't people freaking out?
Yeah, it's not as believable, but
No.
But
actually,
yeah.
Oh,
Go
go ahead,
ahead,
Tom.
Sean. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, the entire time, you're right, there's nothing there. And actually, that same chase, when Arnold's chasing him, they go in those elevators. That's actually in L.A. That's the Marriott in
Right.
L.A. I stayed at that hotel. I went in that elevator where he was using the horse to take the elevator.
Was that on purpose, or was it coincidence?
I had no idea until I went to that hotel, and then there's a little plaque outside that elevator saying, "This is where we shot."
That's amazing.
True Lies.
And you assess like, oh yes, the size of this elevator could fit a horse.
It cannot fit a horse. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I'm not a equestrian.
We could try it. I mean, you never know.
We try it.
Oh, by the way, Sean, this is a deep cut for you. Did you notice the gun that the Sand Spider was using in the bathroom? AK-74U.
Ooh, great Call of Duty weapon.
Right?
Call of Duty.
That's why I mentioned it. That was one of our favorite guns in Call of Duty.
Probably the best SMG you could use at the time. Very versatile.
I agree. Yeah, it was always my go-to. Dual mag, sleight of hand pro. Oh yeah, now we're talking.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Anyway, there's a lot of shots of Arnold on that horse, and I noticed this in, I guess what I watched was HD. A lot of stuntmen. There's a lot of shots you're like, that's not Arnold.
There's going to be more of that revealed during the 4K release.
Yeah. You know what? And I get it. Like, that's how they did things back then. CG face replacement, it wasn't really a thing. But because I couldn't help myself, I did research into the history of CG face replacement.
Mm-hmm.
It did exist then. Do you know what the first movie that seems to have used CG face replacement was?
The first?
The first one that we know of.
That's hard.
It came out a year before this.
Not Face Off.
No, that no, that was after this. But it was a legendary special effects movie.
Special effects movie.
That came out in 1993. It completely changed the game for visual effects.
Man, Total Recall? No.
No. It's Jurassic Park.
Okay. Oh, man.
So there is a shot in Jurassic Park where the raptors are chasing them in the, like, they're not in the museum, but you know when they're up in the rafters and the raptors are trying to get them, and the girl, her name's Lex, she's about to fall and she slips and she looks up at the camera, but it was a stunt person, so they had to do CG face replacement. It was in one shot of the film. So it technically existed before this film came out. And the first major use of CG face replacement was, coincidentally enough, in another 1994 film. They used it extensively to double for Brandon Lee after his death during the shooting of The Crow.
Oh, tragic.
But face replacement did really not become common practice until the 2000s. So this made me think of it when I was watching it, right? Because I'm like, there's a lot of stunt people on that horse. I'm like, why didn't Cameron just use face replacement? It's like, I don't know. It just wasn't a thing back then, really.
Yeah,
it was very early stages.
And to be fair, like, while it does stick out, it's not the most jarring version of it that I've seen.
No.
You know what was worse? We covered it, like, I'm pretty sure back in season 1 with the newest Indiana Jones.
See, that's the thing, right? That's a brand new movie that had all the technology and all the money in the world to get that right, and they still couldn't.
And it still looked so jarring.
Horrible.
Yeah, did you see that yet, Sean?
Oh, terrible. It was so bad.
I didn't think it was bad, but what would you give that as a rating?
A generous C- maybe. D plus,
That's
probably.
not terrible.
D plus, probably.
Higher than the Crystal Skull.
Right.
That's good.
You know my hot take on that, Anton.
Yeah.
They should just bring Shia LaBeouf back, right? I mean, just bring him back.
Well, bring him back from the dead? Because he's apparently dead, according to the new Indiana Jones.
They can write him back in somehow.
He was just missing in action.
Yeah.
That was the strangest part of that movie. They're like, oh, yeah, his son died in Vietnam. It's like, what? Like, why would you include that in the movie? It's like, that's a deliberate dig.
It's a sad way to go out.
Yeah, it's just like, well, that was the worst part of it, right? Depressed, alcoholic Indiana Jones. Like, I don't need to see this. Anyway, back to True Lies. Next reason why it wasn't better, the comedy. This film received a lot of criticism for its portrayal of Middle Easterners and its treatment of female characters. Some Arabs and Muslims perceived the film as conveying strong anti-Arab or anti-Muslim prejudices, with some Arab American advocacy groups calling for its banning in Arab countries. I would say the film is meant to be cartoonish, but I can understand why they thought this.
Yeah, it's there was actually a pretty meta joke in the film that even paralleled, I think, James Cameron's view of how do you use specific groups, and like, for example, when you think of the cartoon Rocky and Bullwinkle, who are the enemies? It was the Russians, but it was very comedic, and the undercover name that the undercover mission that Jamie Lee Curtis's character had to go on was, of course, tailing Boris. And on Rocky and Bullwinkle, the pair are Boris and Natasha, and that's why she said Natasha in the
Doris.
film. But actually, no, it's Doris.
Yeah, Natasha.
And so I feel like that's even just kind of a commentary of kind of like that. Like, this is cartoonish, right? Like, this isn't meant to be taken seriously.
No. And that's the thing about it, right? You get the National Review criticized the plot of the hero using his agency's resources to stalk and frighten his wife as cruel and misogynistic. Roger Ebert actually agreed with this. He said, quote, "If you take a step back from the movie and you really think about the trick that the spy is playing on his wife, it's cruel and not funny, and it sidetracks the plot," end quote. I do sort of agree with this, though. I never thought about it when I was watching the film, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. But now that I read that and think about it, like, yeah, what he's doing to his wife is pretty messed up.
Yeah,
It's a bit.
not disagreeing with that. Probably a little over the top. Did he take it too far? But she was having a little thing with Simon. So she wasn't innocent either. I think they were both at fault there.
But misusing agency resources, essentially,
That's the thing, right?
essentially tax dollars going down the drain to call in a SWAT hit on Simon.
Now, when you see the Pentagon is just miscounting for trillions of dollars, this might be it. Maybe there's some real life true lies going on internally. They're just renting Harrier jets and stuff. But yeah, listen, I think they're both at fault. I think that Arnold, definitely, looking back on it, probably wasn't the best husband, right? Let's call a spade a spade. But Jamie Lee Curtis she wasn't innocent either. She was going off on a little side quest and lying to Arnold's face at dinner. So
looking back on this now, I can understand why Cameron didn't want to make the sequel, right? We touched on this earlier, right? The terrorist plot, it hasn't aged the best. Now, I will, of course, concede that you're not supposed to take it seriously. All I'm saying is I understand it. The only part of the film that I thought was way too ridiculous is the nuclear bomb that gets detonated on American soil, and they treat it like a joke, like it's no big deal.
They're just like off the coast of Key West. And a nuke just explodes. Like, I think we're at the distance now.
I always forget about it. I'm like, oh yeah, a nuke goes off in this film.
So did I. I actually didn't realize that it happens until it happened, and then they all just cover their eyes.
Oh, just way too casual.
Yeah.
It's treated like a joke. Complete joke. They make out in front of it, the backdrop.
I mean, listen, as far as the sentiment towards Arabs or women, I can't speak to that. But as far as like the comedic timing and things like that go, I thought the movie overall was pretty funny. I thought there was some good comedy in it. I thought the one-liners and Arnold's were good. I thought they were funny. I thought they were well timed. I think even one of the last lines of the movie where the what's his name, Aziz, is on the Harrier jet and he shoots the missile and Arnold goes, "You're fired." Just shoots him through the window and hits another helicopter. I mean, that's great. Just great stuff.
It's great.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we talked about the criticisms enough. It's time to talk about what works. A lot of the comedy works. This is a very self-aware movie. Cameron knows not to take the material too seriously. He's having a lot of fun with it. This is basically a comic book movie, right? And it is a really fun spy movie. Schwarzenegger is phenomenal in this role. It's one of his best roles. He's obviously really comfortable working with Cameron, and he is hilarious in this movie. It's really easy to forget just how gifted of a comedic performer he could be, because the material that he is working with here, it's outrageous, and he's playing it up the whole time, and it's really one of his best performances.
Yeah, and Pat, circling back to what we were talking about earlier, when I say Arnold isn't a good actor, right? I think you kind of clarified what I was saying, where he's never going to win an Oscar for showing some sort of range and maybe pulling at your heartstrings, right? But yes, in this type of role where he's just kind of this stoic statue that knows how to hit his punchlines and one-liners, he's great at that. He's really good and very enjoyable, and I love watching him in this movie.
This and Total Recall are like perfect uses of his talents, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's doing all the action stuff, but he gets to show his comedy skills at the same time. Like the scene where he is explaining to the interrogator how he's going to escape and kill him, it's like cinematic perfection. It's perfect, Arnold. Perfect.
It really does make me think, just based on the timing, it's so easy, right, for actors with specific kinds of looks to get typecasted. So for Arnold to take a role like this, I think Arnold in general really was very brave with the kinds of roles he took to not get typecasted or to kind of deconstruct away from what he was getting typecasted as. I like to think of a common parallel today, like Channing Tatum. For the longest time, he was kind of a very specific kind of mold, and still he started to do comedy films, and then you see the dude has really great range.
It's a really good comparison.
It is. Yeah. He's a really funny actor. And also, like, never going to win an Oscar, but that's not the point.
Right. You just work to the strengths, but then also respect when that kind of range and work to those strengths.
My favorite thing about Arnold, and this doesn't just apply to this movie, but a lot of the roles that he gets in general. Can we just talk for a second about the names that his characters have? He has the thickest Teutonic, German, Austrian accent imaginable, and they always give him the waspiest names. He's like, my name is Harry Tasker, John Kimball, John Matrix, Douglas Quaid, Ben Richards, Howard Langston, John Kruger. Hi, my name is Harry Tasker. I'm a computer salesman for Tectel. It's amazing. It's just amazing stuff. He's never given a German name ever, and it's just it's so great. Like if this guy came up to you and he was like, "Hey, Sean, my name is John Kimball. I'm going to ask you some questions," you'd be like, "What?
Sir, who are you?" I love when he's in the bathroom and like one of the earlier scenes, and he's talking to Jamie Lee Curtis about his conference he was just at selling printers. He's just describing the new printing technology in full detail.
What he's just like, yeah, it's amazing. We can get all the client lists and just pull it up with like one computer command, and it's great. I just pull out my Palm Pilot.
Yeah, my name's Conan.
That would make more sense. The only one that kind of made sense, it was in Eraser. His name was John Kruger.
Yeah, that
sort
works.
of. You know what? Maybe I was too harsh on Eraser. That's not a bad movie.
Oh, yeah, kind of underrated actually. Not that bad.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's enjoyable.
I mean, I guess
your luggage.
I guess there is a bit of a question. If the machines were going to send back a Terminator, why would they send back one that has an accent that's not going to fit into 80s Los Angeles?
I think we got to add this to the pod.
The Terminator?
Yeah.
Why wasn't it better?
We did Terminator 3. It was not a great movie. That was actually, it was even worse than I remembered.
Yeah, I was so... Oh, gosh.
What a terrible movie.
I feel like if I reviewed that with you guys, I would watch that and say the same thing. Worse than I remember. That's why I'm happy I watched this again, because it's actually better than I remember as a kid.
Yeah, this held up pretty well. And we talked about one Arnold. It's time to talk about the other. Tom Arnold, he's hilarious in this film.
So
he's absolutely hilarious.
It's a great title.
So good.
The other Arnold.
He's great. I mean, look, Cameron was right about the chemistry. Him and Schwarzenegger have amazing chemistry here.
They complement each other very well, their styles.
I have to say, like, I understand why people are upset we never got the sequel. I would have loved to have seen these two guys in a movie together after this. It would have been great. He has so many good lines, like when he's talking about, like, remember wife number 2? I thought everything was fine, and I come home one day, and the house is empty. I mean, completely empty. She even took the ice cube trays out of the freezer. What kind of a sick bitch takes the ice cube trays out of the freezer?
I mean, to be fair, this was probably Tom Arnold's best film.
It's his only good one.
What put him on the map? Was there a certain movie? Because I don't even know.
It was
Roseanne.
The show?
He was on the show,
Roseanne,
and he married Roseanne Barr.
I know he married her, but I wasn't sure if there was a certain movie or whatever. So I guess it was the show Roseanne that put him on the map.
I think that's what put him on the map. But this had to have been his most high profile like film role, I would imagine. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
I mean, I joke, but he was one of the main stars of Soul Plane.
Right, you keep bringing that one up, Anton, and we're glad you did.
I recently saw Soul Plane.
It sounds like it. Well, look, we're gonna look forward to a full report along with your Mr. and Mrs. Smith update.
I don't remember saying yes
the next time that we record. Sean was there. He heard you.
I'm gonna look at the transcript. I didn't say
I'll
yes
have
to
to
that.
pull that up, but I'm pretty sure you said it.
Yeah, just believe us. James Cameron deserves an award for actually making Tom Arnold funny and likable, because this really is the only role. Like, all joking aside, I've never seen him in a role like this.
If I didn't know who he was and I just saw this movie kind of in a vacuum, I would love Tom Arnold. He would be probably one of my favorite actors of all time if I've only ever seen this movie.
But if you'd never seen this movie and you saw Tom Arnold in another movie, you'd be saying, "Isn't that Kevin James?"
Like, you're like, what?
He was great.
I like Kevin James. He's funny, but Tom Arnold has like that. He has like a slight scumbag quality to him that Kevin
can see
James
that.
could never have. And that's it. All the stuff where they're watching Simon and he's like, the guy's a goddamn used car salesman. Like, that's so good.
It's like Kevin James's brother that's a little bit older that dabbled with meth every now and then. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, not too
Yeah.
much to get addicted, but like he's
Right.
partied. You could tell he's
Yeah.
seen some shit, but he's not a total jerk.
And then Jamie Lee Curtis, she actually won a Golden Globe for her performance in this film.
I thought she did fantastic.
Same.
Amazing. It's an amazing role. When she goes from nerdy to sexy, completely pulls it off. It's very hard to do. A very underrated kind of move, right?
She
Like,
looked great.
It just comes out of nowhere. You're like, whoa.
I'll be honest, didn't remember all that at 9 years old, but 20-something years later, and yeah, good for her.
I mean, I remembered it. I didn't remember all the great scenes that she has, though. Like, she really does play the nerdy angle great. Like, all the stuff with Simon. It is kind of funny how she's attracted to him a little bit, because he is such an obvious loser. And that's going to bring us to Simon. And we could talk more about Jamie Lee Curtis, but she is amazing in this movie. But the standout for me was Bill Paxton.
The legendary Bill Paxton.
He is astounding in this film. It's my favorite performance of his. This is the perfect way to use him. James Cameron knows exactly how to use Bill Paxton. Use him as a supporting character. He's funny. He's sleazy. He's like 10% likable. It's the best role he's ever done, in my opinion.
He was
the fake out when Schwarzenegger smashes him in the face and kills him.
Oh, in his
it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Just like the backhanded punch in the red Corvette.
Yeah.
So funny.
All the lines. Were you paying attention to all the stuff that he was saying right before that?
Oh, he was just
pretty creepy.
But he's selling it so well. Like, oh god, what a sleaze.
Right. Deliberately creepy, yes. It's all the little things with his character too. Like, I was laughing at every little thing that he did. Like, when he stalls out the Corvette, when he's pulling up to the trailer and he's like explaining to her that it's a safe house, and you can just like see like how much of a scumbag he is. And then he's got like plastic wine glasses. It's just all these little things. It's so fun. It's comedy gold.
The penthouse in New York, it's not safe.
Yeah.
I think one of the most subtle, but I think funniest moments of him in this movie is he gets abducted by the Arnolds. They're making him go through this entire interrogation, scaring the shit out of him in front of the dam. He's crying, he's pissing his pants, and then Arnold takes off his ski mask. And the first thing that he does is still try to sell the red Corvette.
Yes.
It's all said and done.
He's like, hey, it's you.
Are you still interested? He was great. He was very good. I think like the top 4 people in this movie, Arnold, Jamie, Tom Arnold, and Bill Paxton, they were just spectacular. All 4 of them.
It's great. His daughter is completely boring. Elisha Dushku. You know,
yeah.
Is that it? Dushku? Whatever.
Yeah,
she's normally awesome. Bring It On, great movie.
Yeah, Bring It On.
Yeah, Bring It On's a great movie.
She was not great in this. She was very unlikable as a kid.
You could. It's her character. You don't need her in the film. It just adds a lot unnecessarily.
Well,
because the film is really about Harry and Helen, right? It's their story.
I think it was really her entire purpose of being in the movie was just so she could get basically captured, so Arnold could fly a Harrier jet and then say, "Daddy's got you," as she's about to jump off, and he's still in the jet, and you have no way of catching her, but he tells her to jump off.
It's a pretty common thing for Cameron action films. Have a kid included somewhere to add to the weight of the danger in the film, right?
Yeah, we've seen this before with Jungle Book Boy.
We saw it in Aliens.
I would prefer her over Jungle Book Boy.
100%.
She was just, but
it works okay here. I mean,
I thought she was just kind of annoying, honestly.
Yeah, sure. Teenage girl, right?
Oh, that she did great.
14, 15.
I mean,
She probably did what she was supposed to
she
do.
was stealing from Tom Arnold. It was wrong. It was immoral.
She stole money from him, but that actually showed that she knows how to steal, so that she was able to steal the key without being
Right.
detected. So
Right. Thank goodness.
tied it all together, I guess.
The last character I did want to mention, Grant Heslov. He is an actor who plays Faisal, the third member of Harry's team. You know, not much of a role, but I wanted to talk about Grant Heslov for a second, just because he is a very interesting individual. If you don't know who he is, while he does have some acting credits, he is far better known for being a producer and a screenwriter and an occasional director. He is George Clooney's business partner. They have done the following films together: Good Night and Good Luck, Leatherheads, The Men Who Stare at Goats, The American, The Ides of March. He co-produced August Osage County, and he is actually an Academy Award winner. He won a Best Picture Academy Award. He co-produced Argo with Ben Affleck in 2012.
So, very successful career.
Yeah, I just wanted to give him a shout out because it's a really awesome career that he's had.
Did it all start with True Lies, or was he doing stuff before this?
He was doing stuff before this. I don't know exactly when he started working with Clooney, but it would have been after this, I believe.
Right, and earliest acting role was in '85. So he's been acting for a bit he'd been acting for a bit in Hollywood, but like you said, Pat, like just really very successful career.
Yeah.
Looks like he was also in Congo from 1995 with
that's
Laura
on our list, Sean.
and Tim Curry, Laura from Ozark.
Yep, that is absolutely on our list. That is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but it's
so
hilarious.
bad.
And he was also in a film that I referenced earlier, The Birdcage.
Okay.
Was he really? Okay. Oh, yeah. All
Grant
right.
Heslov, definitely underrated. Tom Arnold?
Yeah.
Probably not.
No, we've established that he's not underrated. That's correct. But Grant Heslov, yes, underrated. Charlton Heston, we don't need to say anything about him. He's a legend. It's cool to see him in this cameo. Charlton Heston has one of the coolest voices of all time. Probably why they got him to narrate Armageddon. It has happened before. It will happen again. Sean, you mentioned how good looking of a movie this is. Everything really is slick. It's super polished, which is, what you expect of Cameron. Like, he doesn't do anything that looks bad. Yeah, I did have to ask, though, does this look like the most expensive movie ever made at the time? It's kind of crazy to me that it cost more than Terminator 2.
Yeah. I mean, there were definitely some scenes where you said, wow, this is awesome. But
Harrier jet.
Yeah, the Harrier jet. Now, when you broke down that biggest green screen ever at the time,
right?
That's pretty cool. But the most expensive of all time, I don't know. Like, what else was in that movie to really set up that expense?
I think it was probably filming a lot of on location in DC. That couldn't have been cheap. But it's interesting though. I was like, 100 million? Like, really? Most expensive? I don't know. Whatever.
If you asked me before this podcast
for sure.
what the most expensive movie was at that time, I would have never guessed True Lies. That just wouldn't even be on my list.
Like, Terminator 2 makes sense, right? Because of the CGI, it was just like no one saw anything like that at the time. I will say this about this film. The effects in here really hold up. It looks awesome 30 years later. Like, all the Harrier stuff, you can tell there's some CGI going on, but for a 30-year-old movie, it looks really good.
Yep.
I agree with that. It wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to look, and it actually looked pretty good. So I'm excited to see it in 4K.
Yeah, this is absolutely something that I'll see in 4K. The Abyss, I mean, I will want to see that in 4K, Anton, but holy crap, that movie was slow.
Yeah, that was a different experience, but I will want to see it in 4K.
Yeah, eventually. Gentlemen, anything to add before we start to wrap this up?
Not on my end. I'm ready to jump right in.
I think I'm good.
All right, well then, Sean, as you are the guest, would you like to give your rating first or second or last?
I'll go first. I'm not afraid of how I feel about this movie, and I'll just lay it all out there.
All right, I respect that. I love it. Go ahead.
I think, like we mentioned, this was a movie that was coming up on the end of an era, right? It's just a big action hero, almost cartoonish, Pat, like you said. Lots of fun, lots of laughs, lots of action. Didn't take itself too seriously. The top billed people in this movie were phenomenal. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Arnold, Jamie Lee Curtis, Bill Paxton. It is a great movie all around, lots of nostalgia. I'm going with an A, and I don't care what anybody says. I think it's that good. I really enjoyed this movie, and people might debate me on that score, but I really, really like this movie. Not A+, obviously, but an A.
So you would put this on the same level as Cameron's S tier stuff.
I think you have to compare this or rate this in the same realm as movies like this, right? Where I wouldn't compare a movie like True Lies, in my mind, at least, to like a, if we're comparing movies like Titanic, right? Titanic is just in a different realm. That's just like an epic movie. Where this is an action movie with other themes going on. It's just very, very, very enjoyable. I think it's just a great, for what it's supposed to be, an almost perfect action movie.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go next. I'm a little embarrassed I didn't talk about Tia Carrera yet.
This might be her second best movie after Wayne's World.
After Wayne's World.
Well,
That's
no,
right.
no, that's Rising Sun. You're both wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Sorry, I had to lay down the law there. I'm actually kidding. Rising Sun, probably not her best movie, but that's beside the point. Anton knows about my love for Rising Sun. Yeah, her character is interesting in here, playing the femme fatale. I mean, it's kind of a thankless role, right? Like, she's only in a couple scenes. This is kind of the last high-profile thing she did. She wasn't really in much after this, except the Lilo and Stitch voice role, right?
Right,
Like,
and then she started to do a bit more voice acting in Hollywood, but hasn't really.
Right.
Like that was her peak in the 90s.
Right. So as far as this film goes, Sean, you rated this an A, and I completely understand that. Because as far as action films go, for this era, it doesn't get much better than this. In fact, action movies in general, like this is, if you were ranking like greatest action movies of all time, this would be on the list. It's a really great blend of action and comedy, which is interesting for Cameron because I think later in Cameron's career, he would start to struggle with the comedy elements. It would start to get very old. Like I'm thinking about the jokes that he tried to insert into the Avatar films. It's just awkward at best. But this is one of the best, most entertaining action movies of the 1990s. I think it held up really well. There's some elements to it that haven't aged well, which we touched on, some of the terrorism stuff. I think the weakest part of it is the villain just stinks and he's not memorable. And the terrorists in this film are just nothing more than cartoon characters. And it is way too long. If you took 20 minutes out of this, it would be improved. However, this is prime Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's one of his greatest performances. He is hilarious in it. And as far as action goes, this is one of the best action roles of his career. He sells everything perfectly. And he is perfectly matched by Jamie Lee Curtis, who I feel like we didn't talk about enough in this episode, but we did give her due. She's amazing in this movie. This movie doesn't work without her. This really is the story of Harry and Helen. The only thing I didn't like about her character was she becomes a secret agent at the end, which is kind of stupid, but for the first 2+ hours, she's amazing. And then, of course, I mentioned how good the action is. It's perfectly executed by James Cameron. There's some faults in the story, but this is really one of the best examples of its era. I can't quite put it on the level of Cameron's S tier stuff, right? Like, Sean, you mentioned Titanic, Terminator 2, Aliens. Is this on that level? No, it's not. But this is a really good film. I really enjoyed rewatching it. I look forward to seeing this in 4K. And frankly, I would rather we get more films like this from Cameron than another Avatar sequel. I give this a B+. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. So I'm definitely coming in with a bit more of a critical lens. And I think like part of it is because one, of course, there's the criticisms as has been mentioned around how one-dimensional the villains are. I understand that it's a bit more cartoony or doesn't say the film doesn't take itself too seriously, which is a bit of the appeal. But even when I think of its contemporaries, how do you even like just starting to even think of like 5 amazing action films in the 90s, it's like you don't even start to scratch the surface, because to me the 90s you just had banger after banger of amazing action films that really defined for me like the genre of action films. Now True Lies definitely is in there among like best action films of all time, but in the 90s you had quite a bit of competition. I mean, we've already talked about T2, we didn't even touch Total Recall, Face Off, Demolition Man, Con Air, The Matrix, The Rock. I can go on. There's just so many great action films in the 90s that even when I think about contemporaries and films that I particularly like, I think that there's something about this film in particular that I think dragged a bit too long. And I think that maybe if it had been cut a bit, for my personal taste, I feel like that detracted a bit from what could have actually brought this to beyond an action film. I think that this film had a lot of potential to be ascending the genre of action because of these elements of romance, because, to me, it was almost like less so a film about like the action more than it was about this relationship between a man and his wife. And I feel like that is really interesting, and kind of having it in the backdrop of an action film is a great way. And I could see that creativity from James Cameron really shining through. But at the end of the day, I felt like it was, to me, a bit too long. The villain's a little too one-dimensional, but it was a great Arnold Schwarzenegger performance, and Jamie Lee Curtis absolutely kills it. For me, this sits at B minus.
Interesting.
So still pretty good though.
Yeah, still pretty good. I don't want want it to take away from the fact, like, I have so much fun watching this movie, and I'll absolutely watch it again.
All right, gentlemen.
Before we go, Pat, I do have to say one thing. I was doing some research, and it looks like Tom Arnold is in the TV show of True Lies too. True Lies.
Oh,
Also.
The man's still getting paid.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure his schedule was pretty free.
I can't imagine his phone's ringing too often.
We gotta be nicer to Tom Arnold. He might end up on the show someday.
I think he's gettable.
Oh, and he's actually not even he's not even the same character. He's Gib in the movie, and he is Arnie Orwig in the TV show. So anyway.
That makes less sense, but okay.
It does make less sense.
I was gonna watch it, but now that I found out his character name's different, there's just no reason to. Well, Sean, thank you so much for once again joining us for your third appearance on Why Wasn't It Better?
Thank you guys for having me. Hope to be back soon, maybe for the Fifth Element or something else. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think, did we discuss the next film that you're going to be on for?
No,
we'll
I didn't.
Huh.
Let's talk about it.
I thought we did. I feel...
You guys are blowing up. You have, you're monetizing the channel. So have your people call my people. We'll figure something out. You know what I mean? Get something.
All right, fair enough. My people will reach out to your people.
Get the agents,
and we'll figure
something out. That's why we paid them the big bucks. Let's figure this thing out.
So that is it for True Lies. Anton, I believe next week we are covering a Disney film. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We're going back into the water. We were there last week for The Abyss, but we're treading we're treading into some similar deep water excursions with Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
Ooh.
Sean, any thoughts on Atlantis: The Lost Empire?
Haven't seen that probably a quarter century. Not many thoughts.
Same.
Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to need it. Well, that is it for this week's edition of Why Wasn't It Better? Sean O'Connor, once again, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to have you back soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.